Good morning, CHASM listeners. This is Mark Lefebvre, Conservation Planner from the Stearns County Soil and Water Conservation District with this week's Conservation Report. This time of year, farmers are meeting with their crop advisors and co-op agronomists to develop their fertility plans for the upcoming growing season. So I thought it would be good to review some nutrient management practices and in particular nitrogen and phosphorus rate guidelines on corn and soybean, since those are the nutrients we are most concerned about from a water quality standpoint. We use the University of Minnesota fertilizer guidelines for our standard for all technical and financial assistance programs administered through our office. So starting with the nitrogen rates for corn, the rate guidelines are no longer based on yield goals and organic matter, but instead are based on soil productivity, the cost of nitrogen versus the price of corn ratio, and previous crop. Right now, the ratio is probably at that 0.1, which would put the maximum return to N rate for corn following corn at 175 pounds N per acre, with a range of 155 to 180 pounds per acre. The maximum return to N rate for corn following soybean would be 140 pounds of N per acre, with a range of 130 to 150 pounds N per acre at that 0.1 price to value ratio. If manure is used to provide the bulk of the nitrogen for corn, then it's recommended to use the 0.075 ratio, which would increase the N rate to compensate for N availability issues with manure. These rates are also different for irrigated corn, corn after alfalfa, and low productivity soils. The U of M phosphorus rate guidelines are based on soil test levels. If soils test medium or lower in P, there is a greater likelihood that P fertilizer will increase yield. If soils test very high, or which would be greater than 21 part per million on the Bray scale, research indicates that only 7% of the time there will be an increase in corn yield if fertilizer is applied, and expected yield will be 99% of maximum yield produced when no fertilizer is applied. It seems like some producers have started to hit the easy button and blindly apply P and K based on crop removal without knowing where their current soil test values are. One area of concern I have is building soil tests too high. While we do not think of soluble phosphorus being an issue in fields as soil tests increase, the risk for phosphorus loss to tile lines will increase. There is no agronomic reason to build soil tests too high, so knowing where you are and adjusting rates down can reduce phosphorus loss to the environment without sacrificing yield. Many treat their soil like a bank for nutrients, but this bank can be a bit leaky over time should the concentration of some nutrients get too high. Again, the data indicates that soil tests in the very high class will not respond to phosphorus, so skipping a phosphorus fertilizer application for 1 year or even longer is unlikely to present a risk for yield loss. Research has found that soil tests should, on average, decrease by around 2 parts per million per year without phosphorus fertilizer applied for very high testing soils. The drop can be greater if the soil tests are above 50 parts per million, as it takes higher application rates to maintain that high of a soil test. However, maintaining soil tests at this high of a level makes no agronomic sense. Soils testing 50 parts per million or higher may have enough phosphorus to supply crops for 15 to 20 years before fertilizer applications are needed. Allowing P soil tests to decline to levels where P fertilizer applications are more agronomic makes a lot of sense to reduce costs, enhance profitability, and decrease the risk of P loss to the environment. To learn more, there are some upcoming conferences that farmers and crop advisors could attend. The first is the 9th Annual Nitrogen Conference on February 7th in Mankato, and the second is the 15th Annual Nutrient Management Conference on February 21st at the Holiday Inn right here in St. Cloud. I've attended both of these in the past, and they have been a very good way to stay up to date on the latest research and best management practices regarding nutrient management. If you'd like any more information on this topic or any other conservation question you have, you can always call our office, and that number is 320-251-7800, extension 3. This is Mark Lefebvre from the Stearns County Soil and Water Conservation District with your conservation report, and thanks for listening this morning.